Oh, good.
Hey.
What I need to do is start going live. Hey, everybody, we're live.
What are you
Live.
doing?
On this
Hey.
wonderful Wednesday. Today is August 12th already. This is insane. We're halfway through. Yeah, we're almost halfway through the month already. So this is wild.
And it's almost finished the year.
I know, right?
Wow.
This is crazy. I'm just wanting to get a couple more people to come in, but we can just chit chat for a second about our day, our week. How's everybody doing?
I've been good.
I'm blessed and highly favored.
Yes.
I took a 3-mile walk today.
You said what?
I took a 3-mile walk today.
Look at you.
Yes, being healthy during COVID. I heard that.
Yes. Snatch.
COVID. It took COVID to get me to exercise.
Actually, you know what? Honestly, I've been working out a lot more at home, doing my little YouTube videos and stuff. Like I had my gym membership. I don't even think I'm going to get it back, to be completely honest. I've been doing a lot more intense workouts at home with my own weights. So it's been great.
That's good.
Yeah.
See, I've been trying to do that. I just can't get into it. Like I'll try to like lift a dumbbell or something or go running around by my house. I can't. I need the gym. I need it.
See, I'm like Lawrence. I was like, I tried to do hot yoga in my house, and I was like, okay, this is cool, but let me go ahead and join this boot camp so I can be snatched for real.
I heard that.
Okay.
How did you make it hot? You turned the heat on?
Girl, listen. It was just hot in there.
Hot yoga's like 89 degrees.
It be so hot. It's so hot. You just don't turn the air on.
All right.
I was literally sweating. Like, woo.
That's okay. Well, yes, to staying fit and healthy and protecting our mental health and our stability during COVID. Shout out to you guys for that and to our audience, everybody that's taking care of themselves. But we're going to get into it. We have a few people tuning in. Thank you. Tell your friends. Share. Right now, we're going to be on for an hour, and this is going to be an amazing show with some deep topics.
Some heat today.
I'm excited.
A lot of different opinions today.
This is going to be some good stuff today. So as you can see, I got my I Hella Heart Oakland shirt on. I had to bust this one out. I've just been in glee mode since yesterday's announcement of the VP. Mr. Lawrence, I know you are too. We're both from the Bay, so we're repping hard all the time.
Town business.
Business. So let's get right into it. Lawrence, go ahead. We're going to discuss yesterday's announcement.
Cool. So I just wanted to open up and talk about Kamala Harris. As everyone should have heard by now, she will be representing the Democratic Party as the vice presidential candidate. I'm really excited about that. And as we do here, I just wanted to lay some of the groundwork and some of the facts before we get into the discussion. So Kamala Harris, she was born in Oakland, California to 2 immigrant parents. She went to an HBCU, Howard University. She's an AKA. She ended up from there going to Hastings Law School. From there, she became a chief prosecutor in San Francisco. So she started off in the 80s, and throughout the 90s, she was representing the city of San Francisco as essentially like the top lawyer, top prosecutor. From there, Harris's record has kind of been checkered in a way. A lot of people critique her early days. For example, she's in her past fought to keep people in prison, even if they've been innocent. She's refused to prosecute the death penalty against certain individuals. So that's a more liberal leaning position that she's taken. She's also implemented training programs to address police officers' racial biases, but resisted calls from her specific office saying that the California police were problematic. In her book in 2009, she actually considered herself one of them, one of the police officers. But more recently, she's taken a shift to be even more democratic and liberal leaning since she's been elected to the Senate. Since 2017, she's been one of the most progressive voting, left leaning senators in all of the Senate, and she's kind of denounced some of the beliefs or what she had to do in the past is what I think she would say. Being a prosecutor, it comes with a lot of responsibility, but you really are not going to be elected prosecutor unless you have a kind of tough on crime approach. In the history of the United States, only 10% of the prosecutors around the nation have been people of color. So, and her being a woman and being the chief prosecutor, that's a lot of pressure that she had up under her. So as of now, we see a lot of different people coming out in support of her that weren't in support of her before. So I think that's where I want to start off by opening up the conversation. I want to see if anybody else has any views on her past, her current. How do you guys feel about Kamala right now?
Yeah, so I'll chime in because I've been seeing a lot of discourse in social media, and I know we can probably pull up some Black Twitter's been going crazy. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we had this conversation coincidentally when you were a guest on the show, Lawrence, about us just automatically, should we be automatically voting for the Black woman potential VP or not? And we kind of all had our differences and opinions on that. In the back of my mind, I was hoping for Kamala, but I didn't think it would happen because I knew so many Black people had issues with her, being that she had her past as a DA. I try to separate the two because I know as a senator, she's been putting forth a lot of effort, a lot of it more recent than not, but towards Black liberation, so to speak. So, for example, she sparred with Senator Rand Paul, after the Kentucky Republican blocked a bill to make lynching a federal crime. She's amongst the Democrats sponsoring police legislation that would ban chokeholds, racial profiling, and no-knock warrants, which has been a very hot-button topic. So for me, I think that there's an opportunity for her to grow and for us to put pressure on her to do the right thing when it comes to representing us as a people. And I think that we just have to see what happens. But she's obviously a better choice than the current president and vice president sitting in there now. And her clapbacks are amazing. I can't wait. Ladies, did you guys want to
Well, you know, I'm happy to see a Black woman as VP. I can't say that I'm surprised that he picked her due to her. I think he picked her in part due to her past history. I think that unfortunately, this could go either way. I think this can help him, his presidency, and I also think it can hurt him due to her past. And if you really know the history of Senator Harris, it could possibly deter you. Now, I'm not going to say it deters you enough to vote for Trump, but I would be curious as to know how those voting polls will be in regards to people of color. Now, I know a lot of people are happy, and I am thankful that he chose a Black woman as a VP, but I can't lie and say that I'm not a little nervous due to her past history. So I'm hoping that history does not repeat itself with her, but I definitely think that someone like Stacey Abrams would have possibly won him more of the Black vote if that was the aim that he was trying to achieve.
Definitely.
I like that. And, you know, I think it's interesting because we always talk about Kamala's history, and I don't think anyone can speak to her history more than two people from Oakland, but I think you hear cop and you hear attorney general, and you automatically assume that she made these actions against Black people and weren't for the people because of the politics she had to play in that role. And I think we should give a little bit more grace and understand that if we do put pressure on her, maybe she will, especially in this climate that we're in, putting the pressure on her to do what the American people want. It's only up to us and the public sentiment and what we want. I think Kamala got in, honestly, because one, her energy and her strength and her ambition and how she just comes at you, like that's the qualities you want. Especially dealing with the situation that we're in now as a global, on a global front, a global stage. So I think I'm hopeful that she'll do what she got to do. I think that we should extend her grace in her next role. Hope that she comes through. I don't want to put the burden on her like people did with Barack. I think we said this before when Lawrence was a guest, but how everyone's like, oh, Barack didn't do anything for us. But one, it is the symbolism, and it's also you got to play politics. You're not going to, if you don't have the Senate and the Congress advocating for you or pushing your agenda, it's not going to happen. If Congress is at war, then the president's not going to be able to do anything. So hopefully she's in that position that Joe was in, where she can kind of navigate Congress and navigate the Senate in a productive way.
I would say that's a perfect segue. I think a lot of Black people specifically share that sentiment of, we just don't know if she's the right person. And like you said, she was a cop. And so, you know, being from certain communities, if you 12 like off tops, it's no support. One of a pretty popular political activist, Sean King, I think we have some of his tweets. He was completely against her in 2014, is it? As early as that? Or was it 2018? He came out and said and tweeted that he was not going to vote for her, like, no matter what. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, they both help build and advance mass incarceration. And that's not for me. I'm incredibly proud. Now he's coming out and saying the complete opposite, saying how much he loves and supports her and thinks she's great. And I think it really speaks to what we were just talking about, is her Senate history has been good and been trending in the right direction. So I think a lot of people, at least from the Black community, are giving her a shot. I do think, though, from other communities and more conservative communities, that her policing track record would actually help her. Like, I think we touched on this maybe when I was on before, that if Trump comes out and tries to say, you know, all this, all lives matter, blue lives matter stuff, he can't really say that against her. Like, that's not a tool you can use against her, because she's represented cops. She's been the DA. She's put people in jail. So like, Trump won't have that argument. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. For me too, I would say that I think that that's going to help her, because who is Trump? The law and order president. Like, that's his claim to fame. He's Mr. Abide by the law, lock her up, lock this person up. And then when you look at his, he had a press conference just a little bit after it was announced, and all he could say about her was, oh, she was nasty to Joe Biden. She was nasty to Brett Kavanaugh when he was going up to be a part of the Senate. The Supreme Court. That was really all that they had. And that's pretty much what the conservative base in the GOP really likes to rally behind, is the law and order. They want to put us in jail. They want to put bad people in jail. They want to keep immigration at a standstill. And that's another advocacy standpoint that Kamala has been very active behind, being that she does come from parents who were immigrants into the country. She's been very, very active in the LGBTQ community. So there's just a lot of different variations of her that she can appeal to both bases. But at least if it's not the GOP base, it would be the people that are somewhat moderate and kind of in between.
I agree. I think to your point, to your point, she has that law and order type of thing. But I think what we really should be thinking about is who's coming out to vote, because I think a lot of people didn't vote for Hillary, and that was the thing, is like, they didn't have anyone that they wanted to vote for. They didn't want to vote for Trump. They didn't want to vote for Hillary either. And it was like the game of two lesser evils. And so my hope is that people understand now we have this president in office that is, we saw the lesser of the evil, right? Or we saw the bigger evil. So I think what we have to do is get people in the polls. And what I'm hearing from people on the ground in the campaign in Urban League is, we have to actually vote, and we have to encourage people who stood out for the 2016 election to get them back at the polls. And I think that's going to be a struggle with the post office. We see Donald Trump and the GOP trying to cause all this confusion. And even if it's fake or if it's real, people, they're forming a distrust in the post office, knowing that's how we have to vote. So I just hope people don't give up and think, oh, I'm not going to mail in my vote, or I'm going to, and more so are on the edge of, I want to risk my life for COVID. If I can go to a party, if I can go sit at an open air restaurant, I should be able to stand in line and vote on election day. So,
right. I want to bring up this quote by Kenneth. He says, Kamala Harris is the top 5 most progressive members in Congress, which is a really good point. And I don't think a lot of people are paying attention to that. I mean, let's look at her track record as a senator. And actually, we have a really dope graphic that Lawrence found. Lawrence, can you kind of go over this and explain this to us and what this is and how we should interpret it?
Yes, so this is an ideology score index, and essentially what that means is they track every piece of legislation that's been voted upon or that's been brought to the Senate. So essentially all the laws that are essentially going to be passed. What they do is they track if you voted where the Republicans voted, or if you voted for a more Democratic left-leaning type of structure. If you look at the graphic, you can see where Senator Harris is. And the further to the left you are, that means you're more progressive. That means that you've been voting more democratically. And so that comment was absolutely right. She's top 5. And here it's even showing she's one of the top 3 most Democratic, most left-leaning members of the Senate. So her recent track record has really been amazing.
Right. So then go ahead, Gigi.
No, I was going to say, I think Kenneth's other comment, politics is a game of chess. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices to win the game. I think that holds true because, again, I'm not surprised by him picking Senator Harris. I'm not surprised at all. I think that was a chess move. But I do think that her being chosen is controversial. And I will be interested in seeing more as we go through the months of the upcoming election, how people of color, Black people, Latinos as well, how they feel about her. I think these next couple of months are going to be so crucial. And I think that every card has to be played and every piece has to be done accordingly. Or unfortunately, I don't see this decision working in VP Biden's favor.
Yeah.
And I have a question that I want to pose to you guys. How do you all feel about when you said how Asians and Latinos and Blacks, how they're going to show up to the polls? Well, it's been a whole conversation. Is she Black enough? How is her immigration heritage playing into this election? I think those are important things to think about, especially with DACA and especially with ICE, especially with all the detainees at the border. How is she and her politics going to be able to play into that?
I think
she has a really strong.
Yeah, we discussed it amongst us. I thought it was really interesting when I was watching all the news and all the headlines yesterday. All of a sudden, they're talking about her being Asian. It was not anything they ever mentioned about her.
Ever.
And they did the same exact thing with Obama. Obama is Hawaiian with a mixed race. His mother was white and his father is from I forget what part of Africa he was from. I just thought that was really interesting. So all of a sudden, what does that mean? Does that take away from her Blackness? Or does that enhance her likability overall to multiple different bases? Because she's Indian, which is in Asia, but she's not the typical what we think of when we think of Asian, Chinese, Japanese, things of that.
And an interesting point, and I actually didn't bring this up. I don't know how it escaped me, but I was actually on a call with an organization called Calls, and they are basically the Asians Urban League. So they are working to help voter education and civic engagement in the Asian community. And one of the things that they talked about on the call is that they don't necessarily promote or engage Asian Americans as much in the election process as they should. And they're kind of like this missing piece of the puzzle in elections because they don't know how to talk to them, right? It's so many different segments of Asian culture. They don't know how to talk to the Indians versus the Chinese versus the Koreans versus all those Asian countries that make up who Americans are today. So the organization Calls is trying to figure out ways to help Asian Pacific Islanders get more engaged with the political process.
Yeah, and I think that could be a benefit. What do you guys think?
I think that's good. I
want
think
to engage.
Yeah, I think once it was announced that Kamala was going to be the VP nomination, you know, from the Democratic standpoint or from the global standpoint, I think they're already expecting the Black vote. And for good or for bad, I think now they're trying to pull in other minority groups or other groups that can help support the ticket. As you can see, or as you saw with Barack's stint as president twice, it was him being Black and him showing some of the racial cues. We talk about it all the time about his ability to just code switch. He would literally walk down a line of individuals and you get 3 handshakes and then you get to the Black person and he'll dap you up. I've seen Kamala have that same ability. You know, she's an AKA and she went to Howard, so she's been around Black people. Like you can't deny that. And so she can. I saw her on the Breakfast Club. You know, she's talking about Tupac and listening to hip hop and rap and stuff. So I think, yeah, well, that was controversial too because I didn't want to bring that up. She had some timeline issues with what she was listening to. But like, if you talk about Blackness, I think she does enough to get the Black vote. So now they're trying to open it up and say, and Biden's going to get the white progressive / conservative vote. So now they're trying to get the Asian vote or whatever else they can get.
But I think it's all about how she identifies. And, you know, I think, or not even how she identifies, it's not about identity. I think it's just what she subscribes to and what her cultural norms are, right? And I think that kind of, it will tie into our later conversations, like what are the cultural norms, or how is she supposed to feel about Black people? What is she supposed to subscribe to as a Black woman, or what should she subscribe to as an Asian woman? I think all of her backgrounds and her cultural references are important. I would love to get some food from that woman, you know, some like Black some Asian but Black food sounds bomb.
Indian food.
I love Indian food. She might be the cook. I mean, I
know we should find out. That's what
today on the speech she said she loves Sunday dinner.
Right.
So
one of the things I know a lot of people have been bringing up as well is the whole her discussion on reparations when she was being interviewed, and I think there was a quote or there was a snippet that's being rotated right now about, oh, am I going to do things for just Black people and that's it? No. That may have been taken out of context. I may have to do a little bit more research in terms of what she meant by that. But then again, it makes sense. She's a mixed race woman. And when she made her comments, when she made her tweet about who she was, she definitely identifies as an Indian woman as well as an African-American woman of mixed race heritage. So I don't know, should that be something we should be requiring of her to say that she's going to have policy and she's going to be doing things solely just for the Black cause?
I don't think she should do things just for Black people. She's not just Black, and 2, it's Black people are not just Americans. She has a whole American population to serve.
I'm just curious as to, has she always identified both cultures, or is this something that's new?
I think she's always identified herself as having both. I think it's more of a media. The media is pushing.
Really? Where was that?
title.
I never saw anything about her.
Because you gotta remember, when the media picks up the conversation, she looks Black. They're gonna, They're gonna put the label on her that she's Black until she has to speak up and say, no, actually, my mother is Indian. Right. And think about, if you're being raised by 2 parents, we're gonna assume that she was raised by her mother. You think she's gonna discredit her mother's heritage?
She shouldn't.
I don't understand what you're saying. Like, what do you mean?
She identifies as both, so she doesn't just say I'm just Black. She identifies as being both.
And maybe that's true. I just don't remember any articles or anything in the media of her really identifying as both until more recently.
Right. So we have the direct quote. Our producer, Catherine, pulled it up, and I'll run through it really quickly. Catherine pulled it up. Kamala said, if we're talking about writing a check, I don't think it's that simple. And frankly, I don't support an idea or a notion that after all of this, we're going to say, okay, I'm going to write you a check and then be quiet. because that won't solve the problem, which is the systemic issues that are present and will continue to exist, whether or not you write a check. So I'm just saying it's just not that simple. And I don't buy into an argument that it is.
And what is that in reference to?
Yeah, what's the
reparations.
In reparations.
Yeah, so they was Charlemagne made sure that everybody that came on the Breakfast Club, he asked them about reparations. He asked Bernie Sanders this question. He asked Kamala. He asked every other like candidate, because he was doing this back when there were like 10 or 11 viable candidates. And so I think to me, that's kind of a cop out of being like, oh, I'm not going to ask for reparations because, you know, we need to do more than just reparations. It would help. A check would help. You know what I'm saying? These COVID checks help. People like checks. You know what I'm saying? Don't tell me I don't need a check. Like, or you could still do all that's necessary and give a check. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying only give me a check, but I get where she's coming from too. It's hard. It's hard to be Black and be a politician in America, right? We are 13 to 15% of the population. In order to get elected, you need a lot more votes than that. So you don't want to alienate yourself. And I feel like it's unfair to put these type of expectations on African-American politicians that A, say, okay, you solely need to help us. B, you need to vocalize a Black specific plan. Like even when Charlemagne was saying, I was like, you can do that. You're a radio host, and then your main constituency are Black people. So that's how you get paid. At the end of the day, if Kamala came out and said, I'm just going to do something for only Black people, or Barack said that, they wouldn't be an elected politician anymore. We would have no Black politicians. So it's easy when you're an entertainer, when you're P. Diddy, when you're Charlemagne to ask for that. But it's hard when you actually have to go out and get those votes. You have to campaign in all white neighborhoods. You know, like how do you do that?
How do you do that?
And I don't think it's fair to say that. Like, I don't think it's fair to say, okay, you know, politicians, just because you're Black, you have to do something specifically for Black people. You know, I don't think that that's fair. Like you said, she does have to market to everyone, which is why I think Joe Biden was smart in picking her as his running mate. However, I do think that there's something to be said about when in the past history, there is studies that, and there's statistics that has shown that there were harsher punishments for Black people. Now, she's progressive now, and I hope she continues to stay that way. But I'm interested in seeing what she says these next couple of months. We have literally 82 days from election. 82 days from election. And so I think that this is the time that we should really, really pay attention to kind of what she says, and then the policies that are put in place, because it's going to make a difference.
Absolutely. So I think
that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, the only thing for us to do is to get to the polls and for us to do our research. I've been telling everybody that, all these people that have been sounding off on Kamala, calling her the devil and calling her this and calling her that. A lot of people just
not the devil.
Yeah, they're calling her and Joe Biden the devil. Now we know he said some.
He's not the devil. What do you mean?
But we just have to see, you know, how things go, and we have to do our part to do our research and put the word out there. And either way, we need to get to these polls, get to these, you know, mail-in ballots, and do what we have to do. But I think this would be a good time for us to kind of segue, speaking of appealing to African American base and falling into that respectable category. A lot of us have been talking a lot about respectability politics as of late. So I want to I want to throw it over to you, Jasmine and Jerica. Let's talk about respectability politics in 2020. Let's go.
In 2020, you know, my lipstick would not fly about, 30 years ago. But a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago, we talked about Janelle Monáe and we should cancel hip hop and it's derogatory towards women and the lyrics are shameful. And then we got Black is King maybe a week after that, and everyone felt good, empowered. It was a lot of controversy there in the African diaspora. So I would like to think about that a little bit. But also with WAP coming out the next week, how the whole situation and the whole conversation changed to young children and young girls don't need to be seeing sex and boobs and talking about their wet ass pussies. And then the next moment, we're talking about, women empowerment. We should love our bodies. So I just want to have that conversation in the next 30 minutes about respectability politics.
And then can we define respectability politics?
Yes. Define it for us, please.
Can we define it? You have the definition. You guys
I do have the definition. So what started as a philosophy promulgated by Black elitists to uplift the race by correcting the bad traits of the poor has invoked into one of the hallmarks of Black politics in the age of Obama. Respectability politics was coined by Evelyn Brooks Higginbotham to manage the behavior of Black people.
All right, you guys.
So here's the thing, and I'm just going to be honest. I do not like when women have to be put in a box. You expect us to dress a certain way. We can't say certain things. If we as women embrace our sexuality, we have so much backlash. Why can't I be empowered? Why Black is king and WAP? WAP empowered a lot of different women. Her first line was certified freak 7 days a week. So a lot of women were empowered by that statement. Like, man, 7 days a week, I only give it to my husband or man maybe once every 2 weeks. Maybe I should step my game up. But then I can watch Black is King and feel beautiful. I just think people are empowered by different things and in different ways. And I hate this idea that we have to have limitations because we are a woman. And let us not forget of all of the hip hop in general, all the songs that are derogatory towards women and men, and men have made these songs. There's not really a lot of backlash for that. I don't understand why there's so much expectation on Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion. They are entertainers. They're not supposed to be raising your kids. You're supposed to raise your kids. So if they heard the song, parents, it's your fault.
Interesting.
And then it's also like, can the parents turn off the radio? But that's neither here nor there. I think that I don't have a problem with it because I'm a grown woman with no kids. However, I listen to vulgar music. Like, I was raised on Little Kim. What's the song the first song I knew the lyrics to a thong song. So it's like, music is music. We're going to always have these derogatory songs, but what's the time and place for them, I think. And for me, I think sexual music, I don't know. I just feel like it's a time and a place for it. And I don't think it needs to be on YouTube.
I mean, sex has been around forever. I can't say this. The time and the place is whenever you feel like you should do it. And I don't think that there should be a time frame. For a lot of us, this gave us a little distraction. All up and down my social media timeline, it is police, racial injustice, killings. I'm hashtagging get the cops that killed Breonna Taylor every day. I'm looking at another news article. WAP came out and I'm like, oh, give me a little distraction. And I was bumping it. And all of my married friends loved it, but I can't tell you no lie. The single friends, I'm not putting no judgment. But all of the single friends or the non-married friends were like, oh, this, I don't really know. And that's not my place, right? To each his own. But I do find that to be interesting. Women have been talking about sex since the beginning of the time, and so have men. Sex is not going anywhere.
I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think, like, you just killed the whole argument. I agree. Like, why can't it be empowering to everybody? If you have a stance on one side, feel that. And if you have a stance on the other side of the argument, feel that too. Like, it's difficult for a Black man to have these conversations because a lot of time, I'll speak for a lot of us, we're afraid to. And especially when you understand the plight of Black women, you understand, you try to be your best to be a feminist ally, you understand intersectionality, you understand just the oppression and like the double standards that Black women have to go through. So I've been talking to a lot of my homies about it, and it's like they'll talk to me about it, but they wouldn't want to have this conversation. Even one of my homies, I told him about the topic today, and he was like, "Oh, you gonna have that conversation like live? You sure you ready for that?" And I was like, "Yeah. I know how to do it. You gotta first thing you gotta do is you gotta acknowledge that like I'm a man, and I'm looking from the outside in, so I'm not trying to tell nobody what to do. And then two, I've always been like free to titty, do whatever you want to do, be as sexual, be as free as you want to be. From like people personally in my life, from sex workers, if you want to go like to the extreme, or if you want to say just like being free and cursing or doing things that are not respectable. I don't care. Like, do what you want to do. Be happy. For the people that say like, oh, what about the kids? The children don't need to see this. Yeah, that's true. Like the kids don't need to see it, but that's not on the individual. I don't believe in shutting down someone's agency to be themselves in order to raise your kids. Like if that's the case, you shouldn't have had kids if you don't know how to raise them, or you didn't want to, or it's too difficult, or whatever else. Like that's not on an individual. The irony of it is I don't even like the song. I thought the song was kind of whack, but like everything that's going along with it, like I didn't talk about this for the last week. I'm like, hey man, let them women be free.
Yeah,
and
so
that's speaking about it. Oh, go ahead, Sheree.
No, I was just gonna say, so just as from a male's perspective, I think we all talked about the CeeLo Green commentary. I forget, was it Jasmine or Jerica? Was that which you had?
That was me, and that's what I was really gonna say is that I just have a problem with all these men feeling like they have the right to speak on this particular song when there's so many other songs. Like even Ben Shapiro, he even condemned the song. He's a conservative politician and basically said this, like he said that he was disgusted. And so I'm just trying to figure out how you can have an opinion about entertainment, or even CeeLo Green. CeeLo Green talked about Nicki Minaj, and this is what he said. He said, he referred to her as head of state. She's up there in accolades, success, visibility, a platform to influence. Nicki could be effective in so many other constructive ways, but it feels desperate. And he said some other things about Cardi B and Meg Thee Stallion that just was not appropriate, I feel like, especially given CeeLo's history, if you know what I mean. I don't want to put the man out there, but you look it up. He has some allegations against himself with rape. And so now here you are talking about these influential, when I say influential, meaning like they have a big following. And like Nicki Minaj, Meg Thee Stallion, Cardi B, they have a huge following. Let them be entertainers. Why are we trying to hold them to the same standards as, I don't know, like a politician or a certified role model? If your kids decide that's their role model, it's because that's the exposure that they had. But you can't blame entertainers.
Yeah.
So from like, there's a famous joke by Chris Rock, and he said, as a parent, and he's speaking for like Black men, the only job that you have as a dad is keep your daughter off the pole. You keep your daughter off the pole, you won. That's all you got to do. Now, in order to like truly accept this liberation and equality and equity, you have to be willing to say that, you know what, if my daughter is a stripper, I'd be okay with that. And I've sat with that. I don't have kids yet, but I'm sure that I would have to say, if I truly believe that women should be able to dress how they want to dress, do what they want to do, and they have agencies over their body, I would have to be cool with that. And a lot of Black men don't. I'm way on one side of the spectrum here. A lot of Black men is like, no way. And so what they're essentially saying is that why would we support this video, or we have negative things to say about this video because it's influencing the young women to be strippers, and we don't agree with that. We don't think that should be right. Now digging deeper, I'm like, get over it. You know what I'm saying?
Strippers are getting wifed though. Can we just talk about it?
I think,
like, come on.
My whole thing about it is it's the respectability politics, not necessarily for sex but in general, like how I wear my hair, what is beautiful. If I'm going to promote sex, can Lizzo promote sex as well? Or is it only Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion? So that's kind of my thing with it, is that I don't want, if I'm going to feel sexy. I need every woman to feel sexy if we're going to do this feminine movement. I think if we're going to do and have sex and talk about male rappers and female rappers both doing it, and you know the male rappers do it mostly, then give them some responsibility to when they're in a room with a woman, they don't touch them inappropriately when they don't want to be touched. They don't coerce or coerce that woman into things they don't want to do.
We know what you mean, girl.
We know what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want to jump in real quick because I want to go back to another quote that CeeLo said, and then I'll give kind of my views on the overall topic. CeeLo also said, a lot of music today is very unfortunate and disappointing on a personal and moral level. Green told Far Out magazine, there was once a time when we were savvy enough to code certain things. We could express to those it was meant for with style of language we use. But now music is shameless and just outright sheer savagery. So when I look at this quote, I understand exactly where he's coming from. And I think too, when we do that comparison, and I'm gonna be 100 with y'all, I'm tired of the Uncle Luke comparison, because for me, Luke and all of those, that was subculture at a point in time. That wasn't something that you just woke up and you saw on the front page of the news. Now we're in a time where we have a lot more access to news and things are just everywhere. I'm seeing WAP literally everywhere in places that in 1992 we would not have seen. We only had BET Uncut on the late night. And yes, our parents were able to monitor us having somewhat access to that, even though I was still watching it. But it was a part of subculture. It wasn't primary culture. So my issue isn't necessarily with the female rappers. That's what you guys want to do. You got wet ass pussy, go for it. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. Great for you guys. My only primary issue is that I have a sister who's a female MC, and she speaks consciousness. She speaks empowerment. She speaks upliftment. She speaks to her people. She's having such a difficult time as a dope female MC who produces, who writes, who does all her own music, such as other female MCs like her, having the same sort of platform and recognition. So my issue isn't necessarily with the female rappers, because they have to do what they have to do. And Cardi B even said so herself when she had a song that wasn't about her booty and her pussy and everything else, that nobody wanted to put publicity behind it. So she had to do what she had to do to make her coin. So for me, my issue is, why aren't we creating the same platform, us as urban and Black people? Why aren't we lifting up other forms of art just as much as we're lifting up art forms such as WAP? Is it just us not subscribing to it? Are we not receiving it? Or what are these labels doing? And we know a lot of these labels are not controlled by us. You know, so what is the overall narrative and what is the agenda that they are pushing in order to push these females who are selling sex, and men who are selling drugs and gang banging and tripping on pimp slapping? Why is that the narrative that they're pushing as opposed to the consciousness? Like you said, I grew up on Little Kim. I grew up on Foxy Brown. Kaya had My Neck and My Back when I was in high school. We had the Whisper song. It wasn't popular culture, but we also had Lauryn Hill. We also had Queen Latifah. We also had Missy Elliott. So I think that there's just not a lot of duality in both sides of the spectrum. And that's my primary issue. And that's what I'm speaking to. But by no means do I think we need to silence women about their sexuality and being liberated, if that's what it truly is. But then when we mention, you know, if a little girl is walking around talking about WAP, is she really educated? Does she really know what that means? Or is she more susceptible to the public pressures of speaking about her WAP? So I just think that there's a lot of things to unpack there, and we shouldn't be shunning either side, basically. So I'm not going to say, okay, Jerica, you're wrong because you think that, you know, people should be sexually liberated. And I don't think people should be jumping on me if I say, hey, let's look deeper into this and have a better conversation as to why things are the way that they are and how do we change it to make it even for everyone.
And I think when we talk about this, and a lot to your point, is earlier we talked about, when behind the scenes, we talked about the church's role in respectability, politics, and morality, and how we behave as Black people. And now I think because the function of the church has kind of disseminated a little bit, I don't know how many people go to church. I don't know those statistics right now. But now that millennials and this new group of people aren't solely committed to the Black church, and they're pulling their morals and they're pulling their ideas from all these different sources. I consider myself an unfit Christian, but we know the devil was the minister of music, and what we hear, the songs and the cadence and the rhythms are ingrained into us. So that's what we start to believe. This is what we start to think. This is how we start to feel and music is so powerful. Sex is also so powerful. And I just think that we need to take care of those things a little bit more, and hold them closer to us. I would love if people felt the same way about sex, the same way they felt about religion, that you hold that close to you and you know that's intimate, and you know it's not a selling point, and it's not something that I can get thrown money to. But now that we are in the structure that we are, and people got to do what they got to do, and if you like it, I love it. So if they want to have sex for money, do your thing, girl. I'm not mad at you. However, I think sex should be a little bit more intimate and close to your heart, rather than like religion, or like my heart disease. If I had heart disease, like, the world don't need to know about it.
So two things. No. Go ahead, Lawrence. What was you going to say?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, just two things. One, I think that the bigger issue, just to Sharik's point, is not the entertainers, and that's the thing. I'm like, don't blame the entertainers. It's on a bigger level. The people that are in the room that are making the decisions on what singles are being released, a lot of them do not represent what we look like. So I think in order to change the system, we need more women in the room. We need more, Black women and men in the room that represents how we think. Because otherwise, the agenda is going to be money, sex, drugs, killing. That's what they want to sell. That is the agenda. But if we're honest, that's going to continue to be the agenda unless we put people in place that look like us and that think like us on a more conscious level in those positions.
I agree.
Well, I think when you really ask the question, and this is a great forum to do it, I think what it comes down to is, how do y'all really feel about sex and its publicity and its use just in general? We've already heard, like, Chaz, you already said that you think it should be held like close and tight to you for religious reasons. I respect that.
Well, not even necessarily for religious reasons, because I'm not so religious. I know the power of sex, and I know the energies that are exchanged, and I know the energies that are exchanged. I think it's so intimate and so deep.
It can be, though, but then sometimes, like, it don't have to be deep. I don't even know if, like, energies, and I agree with that. That's one, it's your standpoint, and I appreciate that. I applaud that. But I'm saying, like, from another standpoint, people believe that sex is just an act. Like, sex can be just like playing patty cake or something. It's just something I do that when I want to do it, and I'm just kicking it. We just having sex. That's it. We playing basketball. We having sex.
That conversation, right? So, like, if for you, sex is just an act that I just do, and you're in the corner just looking for victim, and I hold sex sacred to me. Mm-hmm. We need to have that conversation rather than you just.
No, we don't need to have that conversation. You just go about your life. I go about my life. I had a conversation with
I think this is good because both you guys are defining sex. Yeah, both you guys are have different definitions and thought processes about sex. But one thing I will say is, so this is something that I want us to talk about, is Black is King, right? Because that has been also, before WAP came out, it was trending and it was popular. And Sharik, I think you were the one that texted us, like, have you guys seen Black is King? And I was like, girl. So I would love to hear, Sharik, your thoughts about, like, Black is King in comparison to WAP, and just overall your thoughts.
I hear a lot of people saying, well, Beyonce be having her booty cheeks out, and Beyonce be doing this, and Beyonce be doing that. And
I love Partition.
Yeah, that's my jam. The thing about it, I think what sets Beyonce apart is, as CeeLo Green said, she's clever with her language. She uses metaphors. She uses, other forms of, she ain't just out there just saying, she's talking about surfboarding. Y'all had to go look up what surfboarding was. She just wasn't outright saying the actual act of what she was doing.
What is it, girl? I don't know.
And a great example of it is like the internet.
Say that again.
A perfect example of that is like the internet and Sid. I don't know if you all listen to them, but they're very vibey. It's vibey sex.
I mean, if you look historically
at sex.
Yeah, if you look at the music historically, like even think about Marvin Gaye. You know what I mean? Like the music. Exactly. The music was very, you know, they hinted at things. They used metaphors. It wasn't just outright boom, boom in your face. So maybe that's just a learning curve. Us as a people, we have to just get over it. Maybe this is just what the new norm is going to be. Maybe our little 3-year-olds are going to be walking around talking about mommy, my wet ass pussy.
And because if you go back to the Isley Brothers or Marvin Gaye, at that time, it was just as salacious. My grandma would have heard that and been like, oh my God, turn that off. You know what I'm saying? The black church would not, they were kicking people out the church. They was calling you the devil. They was saying you going to hell. And now we look back at that and we was like, oh, this metaphor, that's chill. I'll put that around my mom all the time. That's nothing.
History is becoming more liberal. Think of the times where being gay was unheard of and people were in the closet. Now it's like, oh, you like girls and boys? Oh, okay. It's just a lot more open. People are a lot more open-minded. People are a lot more liberal about everything. And I just want to point to Kenneth's comment. He said it's entertainment. Sometimes, most of the time, people want to be entertained or have fun with music and not learn from it. It's a fantasy way of escaping our realities. Music has been around for a very long time, and he's absolutely right. And I think that speaks to the point that I was making earlier. With everything on my timeline, WAP was just a little break into all of the calamity that's going on in the world these days. It was kind of like a small escape so we can have these conversations, because the conversations I've been having for the last couple of months have been about COVID, racial injustice, and those things are always going to be there. We're always going to have to fight those things. But sometimes, just sometimes, I may want to listen to WAP.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, music is also a reflection of what we really feel, and it's an artistic expression of what's really going on.
Absolutely.
Marvin Gaye had What's Going On. He had Let's Get It On. He had What's Going On. You know what I mean? So there's that even playing field that I was speaking about earlier. So I definitely agree. And a conversation that I was having earlier, I think we need to be careful, especially with our young Black girls. And let's just call a spade a spade. Young Black girls are very much so overly sexualized. We know that, and you guys can probably speak to this. Me walking down the street, I went to Berkeley High. We were very close to UC Berkeley, and we had off campus. And I would be walking around throughout the city. I get catcalled. I get, people following me down the street. All sorts of things that I just don't feel as though a young, impressionable little girl should have to go through. But luckily I was equipped with knowledge, and I was equipped with, confidence within myself as a young woman to know what not to do. But I see so many girls falling into these traps, and specifically young Black girls. There's a lot of sex trafficking that's going on, and there's a lot of maturity being placed upon the Black female population at such a young age. And so I've even seen commentary about this in regards to WAP. Like, let's just still be careful and monitor the messages, or at least have these conversations in conjunction with allowing sexual freedom and liberation, so that our young girls can know the difference between the two. A guy can come up to a girl and be like, wop, wop, wop. And then next thing you know, she's in the car with him doing something that she's not supposed to do. So that's my concern, is that it's so in our faces now. I didn't have it so in my face when I was a young girl. And I don't have too many young girls in my life to really know, how it's affecting them. But I would like to get that perspective from a younger girl, to see how it affects them. But I think we do need to be careful. And I think, as progressive and liberal as we're becoming, and I'll tell you guys this as well, I've even been seeing people saying in regards to R. Kelly and men who like young girls, that there's going to be a whole revolution to making that a normal thing. It's
already happening.
Oh yeah, it's happening.
That's
a sexual identity. That's becoming a sexual. So where do we draw the line is what I'm trying to figure out.
Right.
Well, I will.
Draw a line.
I'll chime in right now, since I'm the only one here. I'll chime in for the Black man a little bit. I have a question for y'all. Why is it that we're having this conversation solely in conjunction with the problematic elements of young Black women? How is this affecting young Black men? I don't see that conversation or narrative going on.
That's
Black men are
That's-
raped all the time. Like, most of my Black friends have been raped, like, straight up, if we want to talk about it. They've had sex at 12, 13 years old with a 16, 17-year-old woman, and they don't even know that they've been raped. When you want to talk about having like a messed up mentality or being socialized to not understand and be overly sexualized, if you go into your own Black friends and community, I guarantee you everybody on this panel right now would be like, yeah, that Black man was actually raped and didn't even know it. So these songs, they affect us too. They affect us in a negative way. And then why is it that we don't have this conversation supporting Black men too?
That's awesome.
And I think it's a ego trip for Black men to, one, identify that they were raped, because they're giving power to their offender. So I think that's the conversation, is if men are opening up a little bit more, so that they can have these conversations, because unless they have it, we can't advocate for them, right? And
I don't think, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
And also, to the point is, I think we do put a lot of onus on the Black woman, and saying, oh, Black girls are over sexualized and Black girls go through all this. We want to keep them protected in this one aspect, because they're not protected in other aspects. But I would say we do need to be teaching our Black kids, our Black men, that although these songs are out, it doesn't mean you can take her wet ass pussy. It doesn't mean, because that's what we're hearing from our president, right? That, oh, I just grabbed her by the pussy. Oh, like R. Kelly did this, he's rich and he got away with it. Bill Cosby did this, he's rich, he got away with it. Trump got away with it. Boy next door on the street got away with it. Like, men get away with sexual acts and sexual violence against women so often that girls don't even know that they're getting taken advantage of sexually. A 16-year-old girl, a 21-year-old, 25-year-old dude drives up to the school or paying her little attention, meet her at the mall. She lies about her age, or she's singing wet ass pussy and womanizing herself, making herself feel like she's grown, embracing herself, when she's not really ready to be having sex with this 25-year-old man.
I couldn't agree with you more. I'm just saying that even in this conversation, we should have this conversation about young Black women being abused and raped, 1000%.
Yeah.
But we also need to talk about it as not just young Black men raping Black women. We need to talk about it, young Black men getting raped. Before R. Kelly ever raped somebody, he was raped multiple times in his own family by women and by men. I'm like, until we talk about that.
I think it's a different conversation, right? Because even you said it yourself, they don't consider it as rape. So if you bring it back home to respectability politics, using your virginity as I disagree with that. I disagree with that. And so
I just what you said, Lawrence.
I was referring to your point of like the young Black girl that hops in, like she's 14, 15, having sex with an 18-year-old. She might not see that as rape the same way the 13, 14-year-old male doesn't see it as rape either. But we protect the Black women. But I'm just saying we need to have this conversation, because the perpetrators of Black men that are raping, the statistics show a lot of them have been raped. So I'm saying like, and we should, I'm not taking away anything from protecting Black women. All I'm saying is we need to have this conversation about Black men getting raped, and maybe that would help them not be so aggressive.
I definitely think the conversation needs to be had. But one thing you said is, why aren't we having it? So I'm really addressing that.
Okay.
And I think the reason why we aren't having it is because even like I've heard men say, like, I'm going to make sure that my son has sex with a woman at a younger age so that he won't be gay. So the reason why is because of gender roles. And if we talk about bringing home to respectability politics, it's different. Black women have been sexualized since Sarah Bartman. She was the very first that we know of victim of sex trafficking. And so it's different. I mean, it's not to say that the conversation can't be had. I think it should be had, but it's just different for a Black woman and a Black man. Black women have been sexualized our entire lives. And I think it's up to us to have the conversation that just because the songs are out there, all Black women don't feel that way. Everybody doesn't want to be grabbed in 7 days a week. And I think that both conversations can definitely exist, right? But I'm just alluding to the point where you're like, why aren't we having it? But I think that's something separate. Men and sexuality, I think that is a whole different conversation in itself.
And we
I
don't
don't.
have to do that.
I think it can happen with both, and I say that because
I said the same thing. Yeah.
As I'm having this conversation with you guys, and as you know, Lawrence, thank you for bringing that up. I'm thinking about little girls. What are little boys learning from this? What is their takeaway? What are they learning about female sexual liberation? What are they learning about how they should approach a young lady who's going around talking about WAP, WAP, WAP? So there's just so many different dynamics. And I think that that's a good conversation that we need to have. And it all ties in to respectability politics
Exactly.
It all ties in.
And gender roles and how they're portrayed in the world.
Exactly. So I think this was a great conversation. I don't want to hold too many people up, but we do want to go around. Does anybody have any last words? I'll start with you, Lawrence.
So you caught me off guard there. Last words, I would say in general, or specific, let's start with Kamala. Kamala, I think she's a great presidential candidate. My personal plea, because I'm a Kamala fanboy, give her a chance. Look at her more recent stuff, see where she's trending. She has messed up some in the past, but she's trending in the right direction. And to our last topic, I think that it's important to understand that women, from a man's perspective, women choose what they want to do with their bodies, period. Like, it's non-negotiable. And if you have any problem with that or see it differently, a conversation can be had, but just make sure you're always coming at it from a standpoint of it's not your decision to be made. It's just a conversation to be had.
Good. I'll go. So for me, I'm hella Oakland, so I'm a little biased. I'm just a little biased. So to be completely honest with you guys, I was somewhat emotional when I heard the news yesterday, partly because, as I've spoke about it, my cousin Denise was a very strong advocate in Oakland for policy and political advocate. And it breaks my heart that she wasn't here to witness Kamala be announced. But I'm sure she's in heaven, smiling and singing and jumping for joy. So I'm ecstatic. I think as African and brown people, as women, we should be happy that this is even an opportunity for us. One of the things that I also know Biden said was he was looking specifically for a VP because he is an older guy. Let's be honest, he ain't no spring chicken. If something were to happen, she would be the head of our country. And he wanted to make sure that person was well equipped and well knowledgeable. And I think she's the woman who can do it. I think if you look at her on the polls, if you look at her in the debates, she murders everybody. And it made me emotional because I identified, she's like me. She's from where I'm from. And to me, that's liberating and it's powerful. And it was the good news that we needed for 2020. And then in regards to the WAP conversation, I'm going to continue to do my research. I've been learning a lot and hearing a lot of different discourse, and I think I know where I stand. And check out some of these dope MCs. Check out some of these female MCs that are dope. Shout out to Cheyenne G, who's my sister. Shout out to Rhapsody, who was nominated for a Grammy. There's just so many different female hip hop MCs that we can elevate at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Gigi?
I think for me, I would just say that women empowerment and empowerment in itself comes in different forms, and we shouldn't be held in a box. And I think we just have to have more conversations like this so that we have different perspectives. And so with sexuality, I can't wait for us to really talk about that, because that is something that isn't really discussed in depth about how the media and the songs that are being portrayed affects us individually, both men and women. I do think that this platform allows us to facilitate those conversations, to get feedback, to learn from each other. We all have different backgrounds. I think as long as we continue to try to learn each other, not just in this platform, but in our own communities, and educate the beauty of being a Black woman, the beauty of being a Black man, and uplifting and empowering in our own ways. That's how we continue to grow and progress and become even more amazing people. And so I encourage everyone to definitely stay tuned. We love your comments. We love your engagement. We are happy that you have been rocking with us. I ask that you follow us on social media, as well as on all of our platforms, our personal platforms. We want to get connected with you. We want to get to know you. And we want to hear your voice, because maybe, just maybe, you may join us on the show one day. And last but not least, I say it every show, and I'm going to tell you every time, protect your mental stability and protect your peace. Because once the mind goes, the body follows.
Amen.
And I will just close out again. Thank you all for tuning in. We love chatting with you. We love your comments. We love your engagement. As the VP, Kamala Harris, I'm so excited. I hope and I think she's going to do a wonderful job. I love the symbolism of it all. I love the impact of it all. I think that she is qualified. She has the resume that shows she's ready to work, and she's a heavy hitter, and she comes with vengeance to make this country better. So I'm very excited. On the respectability politics, I just want people to stop managing Black people. I think we all should be able to be actualized in our own individual selves, and that is from being a cosplay girl who loves fan fiction and comic books to a girl who wants to twerk it down at the strip club.
Hey.
So I just want us all to be happy individually and not give pressure to the entire Black community against what one individual chooses. And with that note, I say peace to you. What is it that Flex used to do on that show? Remember? One on Netflix. It's like peace to you.
Oh, okay.
I never saw that.
Bye, guys.
Everybody, till next week. Bye.